Rene, photojournalist, you have taken tens of thousands of photos throughout your career. Arguably, some of your most powerful work has been the work that you've had to document during war. And that's exactly what I wanted to ask you today. What goes through your head? So you're seeing a war happening far away from Malta, far away from where you live, and you go, I want to be there. What goes through your head? Why that conscious decision to put yourself in something that's so dangerous?
I think you started with the most difficult question, because not even I myself would know why. I could be at an event, at a wedding somewhere, and I see that the war is starting, and I start saying I need to be there. I start saying to myself, I have to leave. I start looking at my calendar, the days which are free. Can I make it happen in just 5 days, Why? I think that photography is one of the most powerful means of expression. And capturing these powerful images can actually show the world the pain that people are going through. And through my work, I hope, at least I hope I did in the past, show what the world is actually going through.
Okay, and throughout that career, I think you've covered, around 8 different wars. What was the very first one like? Like, how old were you? Where was it? And what stuck with you the most during that experience?
So my first war was Gaza. I was still in my early 20s. And it's very hard to explain, because it's the first war. You're going in not knowing what to expect, what to find, what to see. I was greeted by amazing people, friendly, talking about after I entered Gaza, obviously. And there are things that would stick on my mind all my life. Entering a war zone, 1 kilometer no-go zone, so you just have to walk straight from border to border. And I see this guy fully dressed in white, coming with tea in a war zone. And it's something which struck me a lot, like, okay. That was like a wake up, like what you see on TV is not actually what actually happens in real life. Because, for example, you can have the war in Ukraine going on, you can have bombs, deaths, murders, whatever's happening really bad in this area. 5-15 minutes around the corner, people are outside actually having a coffee. So the TV cameras would concentrate on the bad part, what's going on, but not all the country would be in turmoil usually.
All right, cool. And I think you were telling me a bit off camera of a very weird experience where being Maltese helped you in Gaza. Can you talk us through that again?
Okay, so I believe, first of all, being Maltese, being kind of a neutral person from a neutral country, has saved my life in multiple occasions, because people treat you differently. You're not seen as the enemy, you're not seen as the helpful person, whatever. You're just seen as just the person doing his job. I think this was in 2007 or 2009, I apologize, because I've been to Gaza twice. And I was working, taking photos in these underground tunnels, which currently right now Israel is trying to eliminate, between Egypt and Gaza. This is called the Rafah border. When I was inside these tunnels, I had permission to go in, but at that point Hamas were not too happy of me being there. So I was beaten, stripped, I had my eye wide open, being hit by I think it was a Kalashnikov. And I started swearing in Maltese. ġbit waħda gravi, bil-qata. And translation, I was swearing really badly in Maltese. And the guy stopped, obviously being Arabic, where you from, where you from? And I go, Malta. And he goes, Malta, Guido de Marco, Malta, Habibi, Malta. I'm like, your heart is racing like 200 beats and nothing. Within minutes, I am back above ground. They gave me my stuff. Okay, Habibi, imshi, like go, you can leave. Okay, so the Maltese word saved my life in that case. A few minutes later, Israel had bombed the whole border and killed a number of people. So this is war. It's so fast happening and things change within seconds.
Yeah, and of course, while that is, technically a positive experience, or rather, one with a happy ending, you are definitely in places where I would assume you have to experience life-threatening injuries and death on probably a daily basis. How is that like? How close are you to these, horrific moments? And do they have any effect on you when, you come back home to what is essentially very mundane, normal life.
It has a deep effect on me. I mean, every war zone is different. So if you had to ask me which is the worst war zone of your life, no doubt, it's Libya. I've never seen so many people dead in the same hangar, in the same room, all killed in a horrible way. And these are things which I still have nightmares about. I'd have issues sleeping for many weeks. I've been told I have severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from seeing traumatic events happening in front of you. So it's something which obviously I grew up with. And today, coming back from Ukraine, and the massacre I have seen happening in front of me on a daily basis, it's like the norm. It's like I'm in the theater, doctors are cutting off soldiers' feet, but they're listening to Metallica, they're listening to Green Day, Offspring, and this is music I grew up myself in the 90s, And at first you're in shock. Why are they listening to music? What the hell? There's people dying all over, and then you realize it's for your head. It's to keep sane. It's to manage to cut off from reality, save lives, do your jobs, bandage it, next person in, let's save the next one. It's a harsh reality, Then you land back in Malta, you land back in the airport, coming out of a war zone, and everyone's happy, everyone's eating and drinking beer, and you're going like, dude, you have no idea what I've just been around, and it's quite hard to adjust. I'll say this, and possibly I've never said this to anyone except to my own wife recently, is that I just came back from a war zone, and within 24 hours I'm in a wedding, and it's hard to adapt. You're seeing people who are happy, and I'm crying, and you ask me, why are you crying? Why are you depressed? I don't know why. It's like your body trying to adjust from one extreme to the other. Yet you have to hide it. You put up your mask, you're smiling, you're happy, and you have to do a good job, because the bride will always... she's not happy.
And in fact, my next question was going to be specifically about Ukraine, because just like you said, it was very recent. It was just a couple of weeks ago. This is, of course, not your first war zone or even your first time in Ukraine, I believe, right? But we have seen specifically on social media as well, you were sharing your experiences. You were saying, we could feel just how close you were at one point to the front lines, just how, you narrowly avoided, being in the exact same place that was bombed just 24 hours later. How was this one different? Was it different to all the others? How was this experience for you?
It was different because this time I was in a war which is evolving. It's not a fixed war like Gaza is a fixed war. It's been going on for decades. Obviously, things at the moment are very bad. They've never been this bad. But it's a fixed war. You have people fighting one side and people fighting from the other side, all contained in one area. The difference with Ukraine is that it is a moving war. You have Russia advancing on one side, advancing, I believe, 150 square kilometers a day in some areas. And then you have Ukraine advancing inside Russia in the Kursk region. So it is an advancing and moving war. So I had never experienced something like that. I had never experienced where being in a village in the morning is fine, but being in the same village in the afternoon is not fine, because the enemy, or whoever you want to call them, would have actually moved in that village. So it was a very different experience. Plus, this time it was too close for comfort, if I can use those words. Is how I felt myself inside. Those who know me know I suffer from severe anxiety at times, but when I'm at war, I'm at peace. I'm comfortable for some reason. It's like it's what I'm meant to be doing in my life. It's weird, I know, but I'm here right now in front of you and I'm anxious. I'm in a war zone, I'm calm. In certain areas of Ukraine, I was very anxious and very, very nervous because I could tell I'm not safe. It was simple. You have drones flying constantly above us and you hear the buzzing sound of them. And the people who I'm with told me, no, you're fixated, there's no noise, there's nothing above us, it's safe. And I go like, you guys are not safe here, you're going to get bombed. Like, it's obvious, they're spotting where you are. And 24 hours later, the whole compound was blown and burned to the ground. So it was a very different war because, as I said, it's an evolving war and you don't know who you can trust.
And what I find really fascinating as well, and it happened just now as well, you said the enemy and then you kind of held back a little bit, or whoever, as a journalist, I myself, who, I'm just behind a desk as well, sometimes find it very difficult, but I know that it's very important to be impartial, unbiased in my writing. I imagine it must be incrementally, impossibly harder to do that when you're in a front line and you're seeing people die on a daily, on an hourly basis. How do you navigate that? Do you feel that you would be compelled to pick a side, or do you feel like that's not your job, and do you manage after all?
So if one manages not to pick a side, it's practically impossible because the side is already chosen for you. If you're shooting on the side of Ukraine, then you're practically taking their side. If I am given the opportunity to go to Russia and shoot their side, I would love to. But then it is like you're taking their side. So who is the enemy? It's not for me to decide. My job as a photojournalist is to go to these places, document what is happening, and then people see my images, and from the power of these images, they decide who is right and who is wrong. I would love to have my opinion. I would love to be out on my social media swearing at countries who are attacking one another. But what good do I do out of it? It's not my job either. I love politics. I'd love to be a politician maybe one day. I always said I'll be in politics maybe, But it's so hard because in politics you have to take a side. And my side would never be, for example, red or blue. My side will be the people. I am there to show the suffering of the people. And by showing these images, people will decide right or wrong.
And you just mentioned being on the Russian, like being on the other side, right? And incidentally, one of the last things you gave as an update from your last trip involved the Russian number plate, which I believe you actually have with you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit the story behind that and why it's such a crazy thing to have right now in your hands?
I don't know why it feels so crazy, but for me, this is like part of history. If you go back to the Second World War, and you had, for example, the German cars advancing into a different country, these days, finding these type of memorabilia, maybe we're going to call it, it's part of history. So this Russian military vehicle crossed into one of the Ukrainian villages. It was shot, blown to bits. It's full of bullet holes and shrapnel, as you can say. And that's part of history right there. And it wasn't easy to actually get it out of the front line. And it wasn't even either easy to get it out of the country. Because when you arrive at the airport having Russian, imagine you crossing through the Ukrainian border and you have a Russian number plate. Who's this guy? Lots of questions, and no, you can't take that. And I'm going like, listen, I had to pay lots of money for that. Not money, but I had to buy lots of cigarettes for the soldiers to manage to get it out. So now I believe that will be a part of history. It already is, and in 40, 50 years' time, it's something which my kids will cherish.
Do you have something else that's like that from previous trips, something that is memorabilia for you, a part of history? I know it's funny, I didn't bring them with me, but I have these lemons. So each time I go to Gaza, I bring a lemon. And I would leave the lemon dry up, and then the lemon becomes very small, it becomes hard. It's like a human body that deteriorates over its degeneration period, So I always try and bring stuff with me back from countries. I mean, I have bullets. In this case, I would have these bullets here from Libya, and these were actually being shot by Gaddafi's forces. And then on the other side, I would have the bullets being shot by the rebels to them. So again, that is part of history. You could see one had much more shooting power, bigger weapons, bigger army. One was shooting with these 9mm stainless steel. So you start to understand, but this is history. Because today, this won this. What happened to Libya after that is not my concern. I'm not going to go into what happened, if it's better or worse or now, but that's a different story. But when I was there and then, that is part of history. Because the rebels overthrew the government of Gaddafi. And you have both options right there. And you have bullets. Sure, I get that. But what about a pack of cards? Why was that such a... As in, it's obviously a very different kind of pack of cards that we can show.
So this pack of cards it's quite weird. So the American army, when they invaded Iraq, were given this pack of cards. And every card, there's a government spokesman, military personnel, army leader who had to be killed, right? And obviously Saddam Hussein is the ace. So each time they manage to kill or eliminate one of these people, the card is taken out of the pack and thrown away. And that would be when they know that the war would be over. So I managed to find a full pack, which was never used. And I actually found this in Baghdad, in the center of Baghdad. So again, it's a memory. Am I judging who is right or who is wrong, who's fighting the war? Again, never my job, will never be. But being part of history was so important to me. And the images I have taken, I believe, in a couple of generations will actually show what the world was going through in these modern times. I mean, we are in 2024, approaching 25. Would we ever have imagined that we would have war at the doorstep of Europe? You know, would we ever imagine we're going to have soldiers being killed hundreds a day? Yeah, it's just horrible. And this is happening in our own continent in these modern days.
And in fact, the last part of what I wanted to ask you about is very much something that has persisted through the decades. So you've seen wars and you've seen conflicts that have come and gone, but of course there's definitely one that has persisted for quite some time, and in fact is your very first experience of war. Gaza, you visited twice. I believe the last time you visited, which was about 15 years ago, I was reading a little bit your experience, and I think you had described setting foot into Gaza as going into hell, basically. Yeah. So what was that experience like back then, and how does it compare in your mind, in your heart maybe as well, when you see images coming out of Gaza, you know, a decade and a half later?
Gaza is, I believe, the saddest story of the whole world. Gaza is the biggest open prison on earth, surrounded by a wall 10 meters high. No one can get in, nobody can get out. I will not go into the discussion of who is right and who is wrong. I have covered the war on the Israeli side, and I have seen the massacres done by Hamas on that side, which is horrible. So many innocent kids, families, butchered in their homes. So it's very hard not to take a side, though, when you go inside Gaza, because you see children being massacred every day. I have been trying to get into Gaza for the last 6 months, 7 months. There's no way in and there's no way out. And for those who are in, the journalists are being killed on a weekly basis. Before you ask me a question of here, how does the blue bulletproof vest feel? It's like a uniform for journalists, right? It's anger when I see journalists being buried with this vest constantly for just being there in the wrong place at the wrong time, or specifically being targeted for actually giving out the news of what's going on. I will repeat that Gaza is the shame of the world. Now, who is right or wrong? People can tell you, let's go back 50 years, let's go back 500 years. Who bloody cares? You know, when you just see these videos coming out of children with their heads cut off, being stuck under the rubble. I was in Gaza in 2009, and something which struck me was, it was the first time I saw a kid which was dead, obviously, and I had the hand still stuck to the teddy bear, but the hand is just the hand on the ground, and I was saying, okay, where's the rest of the body? Is it under the rubble? And it's just the hand. And it was my first really, really bad experience in Gaza. Obviously, what came the next day and the next weeks was actually much worse. But compared to what is going on today, it's hell. Imagine you are stuck around a wall, you can't get out, and bombs are falling from everywhere, and you can't even safeguard your family. I mean, I have friends, I have many friends, I have family in Israel, and we speak often, and I have friends within Gaza, and they keep help us, we can't get out, we are stuck. We have nothing to do with this war. We don't care about either Hamas or either Israel. We don't care about anything. We just want to live our lives. And it's a very hard situation to be in when people are asking you to help and you cannot do anything to help them.
And of course, what you can do and what we try to do is reporting and documenting all of this so that the world can know a little bit more about what's happening within this, very much as you describe it, an open prison. And yes, I was, of course, going to ask you about, the blue press vest, because in this past year, approaching a year actually, October, we've seen quite a lot of this vest, even more than usual, unfortunately. And it's never really a great image that follows. You know, sometimes we see this vest buried under rubble, bloodied up, with Al Jazeera journalists mourning their own. And you said you feel this anger, obviously. Beyond that, do you feel like there is enough protection offered to photojournalists in war zones? Can it even be something that can be offered, or is it just something that it's just, you know, it's literally a no man's land kind of a pit?
So there's two sides of that coin. The first side is that if you are embedded with the military, so I've known, for example, Israel has taken in a few journalists into Gaza at the beginning of this summer. They were embedded, they were taken in bulletproof vehicles, they were taken to specific points where it's safe, and they were protected. But then what are you saying? You are seeing what they want you to see, correct? Same with Ukraine. I mean, if the Ukrainian army tell you, yes, you have to go there, you can go there, you are seeing what they want you to see. But as an investigative war journalist, you need to go down and meet the people and be with the people and listen to their stories. And that is how you get the best stories, by listening and living with the people. I remember in Libya, people told me, like, how the hell did you manage to cross from this side to Libya to the other? And I crossed all Libya with 200 euros. And I spent 2 weeks in Libya with 200 euros because I lived with the people. I would get lifts, and hitchhiking in a war is not a good idea, but that's what I did. Because it is the best way. When you meet the people, you get the real life stories and you understand the real suffering of the people, not just the military perspective.
Yeah, and you've mentioned Libya, you've mentioned Gaza, you've mentioned Ukraine, you know, so many of these wars. And I would imagine, and I know for a fact that you've taken so many of these, you know, powerful photos. If you had to think right now, if you had to close your eyes and just imagine, what do you think is the most powerful photo you've ever taken?
There's one shot which is the front cover of my book, which came out a few years back. It is this kid. I can give you a whole story about him. His name is Mohammed. He's 14 years old. He lives in Benghazi, Libya. And it's a very powerful photo, which is just this kid holding an Kalashnikov in his hands, and just the look on his face is terrifying. That's it. And in fact, I took this portrait of this kid, and I turned towards the family who were kind of hosting me. I said, that's it. I have all I need. I need to get out of this country safely now, because this photo is a representation of everything that's going on in Libya. I can get out of here. Mohammed lost his father, his mother, his grandma, and both his siblings in one bomb attack on his house. He is the only survivor. He has no one to protect him, and he feels his only protection is the gun. And the look on his face is just chilling. So for me, that would be one of the best shots ever taken, which I can publish. Because as you know, we've spoken this off air, there are so many images I cannot publish. I published some photos on Facebook this week, which were all covered up and as neat as possible. And half the images were taken offline immediately. The next thing, which to me is shameful and nothing else, from Facebook, is when they said, your post has been moved down lower in the feed. Why? Why has my post been moved down lower in the feed? It's not important. People dying is not important. But then you have all these stupid videos coming up of people showing off their most expensive cars and handbags and all this crap we live in these days. But that is the top feature on your bloody feed. And what is happening in Europe now, all this massacre, all these people dying, or same thing if you had to post about Israel and Gaza, goes lower in your feed. You don't think it's shameful? Yeah. What can a journalist do? How can a journalist show his work? Because the newspapers these days are not even close to as powerful as social media. Today, when something happens in Malta, let's say there's an accident, a fire, an explosion, do we go in the portals and look at the newspapers, or do we find out from Facebook first? Let's be honest. Find out from Facebook. In most cases, I hope. That's the way it is. And when you see that your feed is being pushed to the bloody bottom because you're showing the truth of what's going on in the world, it's shameful and nothing else.
Is there one war zone you wish you went to that you didn't?
No, because every war zone that happened in my lifetime, I was there.
You were there.
I was there. So,
and you're trying to go back to Gaza anyway.
Of course, I would love to go back to Gaza. I would love, as I said, impartial. I would love to shoot both sides of the coins. To get to Gaza, you have to pass through Israel. So you need to shoot both sides of the stories. And you need to show the suffering of both sides. So, but there was one time I crossed from Iran into Afghanistan illegally, for example, and I just wish I went further. I was too scared of the unknown. I mean, come on, crossing from Iran into Afghanistan is no joke. Just mentioning the two countries together already sometimes gives people the chills, you know? So crossing into Afghanistan in the middle of a war zone from Iran, how do I get back out? How far deep do I go in? And the only regret I would have about that specific war is not going further in. So.
What would you have found, do you think?
I look up to photographers like Steve McCurry, who's been to Afghanistan several times and got these amazing portraits. I've been to the borders of Afghanistan and I've crossed into Afghanistan and I have these amazing portraits myself. But I believe if I went much deeper and I could have got much better. So as you know, Afghanistan was split. You had the Americans on one side, you had the Taliban on the lower side. I was on the lower side of the Taliban side, which is obviously known to be more unsafe. But today the Taliban are welcoming tourists into their country. And then trying to build, I know it sounds weird, but they're trying to build the tourism back. And I believe it was not as dangerous as I thought, or as my head told me it was. I should have gone further and actually try to spend days living with the Taliban and get those amazing shots like Steve McCurry got of the Taliban praying, eating, having their family moments. These photos would go down in history. As you know, Steve McCurry is one National Geographic top photographers. One of the few regrets in my life.
So that's the ingredient, no fear.
No fear. Will Smith once said, you spend your nights wide awake at night, beating the crap out of your head about jumping out of the plane, skydiving, for example. And you're so worried and you're so anxious and you're so scared. And you're so scared of what? Because you haven't even jumped out of the plane yet. And the moment you jump out of the plane, you realize it is the best thing you've done in your life and you feel free. So there's the two sides of the coin where you're so scared to do something, but it's the fear from stopping you from doing what could actually make you succeed and bring out the actual images you need. And that is the fear that stops you. Fear is the biggest issue in every photojournalist, I believe. It stops you from moving forward.
Rene, thank you.
Thank you for having me.